Atheist Nomads, episode 256. Think of the children. For goddamn... Ah!
The podcast you're about to listen to includes cursing and talking about hoo-haws. Please be advised.
Yes, there will be much cursing with this one. I am sorry. There's some stories that aren't quite so bad. But anyway, I am Dustin, and Lauren is with me.
Yay!
Producer Rocco is licking her hand.
So cute. Giving me kisses.
Kylie is sitting with me, nice and happy. And we have Gary back.
Hello, everyone.
Gary
Hi, Gary.
Gary, you haven't been on since before the baby.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, the very end of your rush to get the episodes out.
We should make the guests hold her and keep her quiet and put them to work.
Yeah, except it all depends on the guest as to how well that will work.
He's got a beard. She'd love it.
Sure, it's a small one, though.
Beard.
Ah, man. How's everything going with Idaho Atheists?
It's been pretty quiet, honestly, just because, Idaho, mostly, and I think everyone's got bigger fish to fry at the moment.
Totally.
It's hard to keep up on doing anything progressive.
We're not center stage right now.
No, and it would be unfair to every other, issue that needs resolution to bring anything up. So, yeah, we're just sitting tight for the time being.
Okay. Right. Get attendance to meet an atheist?
Yeah, the last one was like 20-some people, which is not bad for pretty much anything, honestly.
Yeah, well, and this time of year.
Yeah.
Tends to come and go.
Oh, totally.
And it was last minute. We had a day and a half's notice, I think. So that was pretty awesome.
Sweet.
All right. Well, let's go ahead.
Aren't you going to ask me about what I've been up to?
Oh, yeah. How have you been, Lauren?
Good.
Okay.
Check that one off.
Yep.
Exactly. Pay attention to me. I am not doing anything in particular. Nah, I'm dog walking. I'm making monies. Dog walking and playing with puppies. Best thing ever. It's like all the stuff that Dustin's about to really let himself get raged on. I'm just like, whatever. Puppies, man. Puppies and babies. Well, not other people's babies, my baby.
Yeah. Well, Kylie's pretty amazing.
I'm even arranging for a puppy parade and derby, a corgi race. It's gonna be amazing. There's gonna be so many corgis, so many short little dogs. It's gonna be amazing. Mark your calendars. August 18th, 2018.
Are you gonna have a sheep herding event for them? Or?
No. These dogs are so fat, and so most of them are too old, and most of them are so not healthy that if you were to bring a sheep or something among them, I think half of them would die of heart attacks. Pure excitement.
Okay, the word cult has... We're going to just jump right in now. The word cult has a lot of meanings.
Aren't we going to do your Dustin off the degree?
Or was this part of the degree?
This is.
Okay.
Yeah, no, we need to do like a theme song or a montage or something.
But we don't have one, and montages aren't good audio.
Dun, 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 dun.
Okay, for Dustin off the degree, we're going to talk about cults.
Nailed it.
So, it's a word that has a lot of meanings. Like in archaeology, anything you can't explain is cultic, because obviously it's religious. There's an amazing book on archaeology. It's satirical, where future people walk into a modern-day bathroom and interpret all of it as cultic.
It's obviously a religious shrine.
They don't know what the 3 shells are for, I assume.
Yeah, there's that. There's the altar that of the water bath altar, the toilet, that even has its own headwear that you put on to show proper reverence to the gods. And yeah.
Is that the toilet seat or the shower cap?
Toilet seat.
Very nice.
So because it's got the part that goes around your neck, so it provides the collar plus the hat part with the lid.
We should start bedazzling toilet seats immediately.
We should.
We should just start selling sets of 3 shells.
Honestly, yeah, good call.
Some with glitter.
Toss a starfish in there just randomly.
That'll be great. It'll be amazing.
But just in general, though, in archaeological terms, it's cultic if it's a religious site or artifact. And this is because in its original meaning, the word cult just means worship. Came from the Latin for worship via French and then into English. And It's a relatively modern use of the word to describe bizarre religious groups, because it just means worship or religious. However,
everyone's a cult.
Well, yeah, all religions and all religious groups are cults at its most academic usage of the word. But if you try to use the word like that, nobody's going to be happy with you.
It's like using the term Christian mythology. You'll get a lot of stink eye.
And now, even with Christian mythology, you're going to have an easier time getting away with that than calling the United Methodist Church a cult. Yeah. On the other complete extreme, you get really informal uses of the word cult, like cult classics, TV shows, movies, comic books that develop a cult following.
They are worshipped.
Nobody actually worships Firefly, but it has developed a large enough following and quite a few dedicated fans, like Kylie, apparently. She's never seen it, but she's
shiny.
Yeah. But enough that it's considered a cult classic, despite not being all that old. Alien would definitely fit into that category. There's a lot of things that do. Yes.
So what does occult mean?
Occult is not related. It means hidden.
Oh. Well, I'm glad I asked because I thought for sure that meant something.
The occult is, well, it's
like
hidden,
witches.
It's hidden stuff. So it's secret, secretive magical things.
Like secret knowledge to some degree.
Yes, but not that.
Yes, but no.
But not really. Yeah.
But close. Similar concept, but different. But then there's many groups that we've talked about here on the show recently that are considered cults by many or even most people. And I have actually very intentionally avoided using that term because it's most commonly used as a pejorative for weird groups.
Yeah.
And despite the fact that this word is almost completely meaningless and useless, there is a meaning that is actually pretty well accepted and at least unlikely to cause confusion. So generally, cults are new religious movements. That means they've started sometime since the mid-1800s. I would suspect that used to be since the early 1800s to include Mormons and Adventists and the like. But if you stick with the since the mid-1800s, you can exclude those groups, but you can still capture Christian Science, Jehovah's Witnesses, the Davidians, Moonies.
Yeah, well, it depends on who you talk to.
And yeah, it does all.
I grew up in Mormon country, and everybody who was not Mormon was like, Mormonism's a cult. I'm like, well, you're all culty.
Okay.
From my point of view.
So another area where Mormonism fits in well is high degree of devotion to a single leader. The Moonies are one of the best examples of this, where Reverend Moon was Jesus reincarnated. The Branch Davidians, not to be confused with the Davidians they came from, but David Koresh was a cult leader. He personally identified as the new Messiah and wanted to have sex with all of the women.
It's funny how it all comes around to that.
Almost always, yeah.
Almost always. You have a charismatic male leader who's just doing every girl, woman, sometimes child that he can get his boner in.
Now, with the more extreme ones, the alternative on that is absolutely no sex, like the Heaven's Gate cult, where all the men had to castrate themselves.
I thought they went through a period of being a sex cult and then becoming a no-sex cult.
Probably.
I thought they switched up at one point because he was really scattered. Like, he would change, not quite weekly, but pretty quickly he would change.
Oh, that definitely could be the case.
Googling it.
Cults have novel beliefs. That is something that is really quite meaningless. It just means they believe something different than everybody else. If that wasn't the case as a normal thing, we wouldn't have thousands of different denominations of Christianity in the United States. They all believe something different than all of the others. They deviate from social norms. You will often find groups that are identified as cults like Heaven's Gate, for an example, they all wore sweatsuits.
And it looks like it was pretty much forbidden all the way. Yep.
Was that the one in California, Oregon?
California.
Okay.
I was 10 miles from it when it happened.
Wow.
Yeah, down there on spring break. So yeah, the deviating from social norms, you'll see that a lot with bizarre dress, like a lot of the really conservative movements. Basically no bare skin. So women are expected to wear long ankle-length dresses with collars that go above the collarbone and long sleeves. The men wear long pants and long sleeves all the time. And that is really, really common across a lot of cultic groups.
And of course, no porn shoulders.
And no porn shoulders, yes.
It was funny when you said bearskin. I was thinking like bearskin rug. I'm like, you can wear wolf skins, but no bear skins.
But the other deviation from social norms that you'll see in some cases is, like, Adventists were considered a cult for quite a while because they didn't eat pork. They wouldn't go to theaters. They thought bicycles were extravagant wastes of money.
They are.
At that time, they definitely were. They weren't a viable source of transportation. They already mentioned wouldn't eat pork. That was pretty weird. They also didn't like eating meat. And they had a profit. And you combine all those things together, and yeah, that fits a lot of those descriptions of a cult. And they deviated from a lot of social norms. No coffee, tea, no alcohol.
Those freaks.
Mormons have basically all of those same things, except they don't have a problem with meat. That's about it. Adventists at least were closer to Christian. But then other things you'll have is cults will often isolate themselves from society. This can be in the form of like Georgetown. They packed up and they left the country. There's David Koresh and the Branch Davidians. They all, once they got control of the Mount Carmel compound in Waco, they all moved into the compound and separated themselves from the rest of the world. Warren Jeffs with his fundamentalist Mormon group, they have their two towns out in the middle of nowhere. When the
seriously, apparently my dad ran into one once when he was in the field as a geologist, and maybe not Warren Jeffs in particular, but just one of those FLDS compounds, and it is a compound. It is barbed wire around the walls. You could see women and children wandering around in the inside of it naked, while guys were up on turrets with automatic machine guns, and that was when they he turned right around and went back up that canyon wall. He's like, nope, not paid enough for that.
And of course, Scientology is really big on ostracizing themselves from the rest of society too.
Yeah. Now they do it the other way. They're in plain sight.
Yeah, you just can't get very far because they've got technology, I guess, as their tether instead of walls. Yeah,
so and Moonies would be another group that handle kind of similar, where rather than isolating themselves geographically, they're very distinct within the society and culture, but are yet everywhere, which comes in really handy for the next part. They have a tendency to very aggressively proselytize.
They'd die out if they didn't.
Well, when you have a new leader who wants followers, you have to attract followers. David Koresh is a good example for this. He went around and between various Davidian groups and Adventist groups would travel around and meet with people, study with them, and try and recruit them into his group, and was very successful. And depending on the group, they either reach out to the general population, where it's often easy to take advantage of people who are highly susceptible, either people who have mental health issues that aren't being properly taken care of, people with substance abuse issues that aren't getting treatment that they need, or people who are just having a rough time at life. If you catch people who are going through divorces, or who just lost their job, or who are going bankrupt, or any of those times, people tend to be much easier marks.
Mormonism is not exactly against that idea either. They do tend to pray a little harder when those opportunities arise.
Every group does.
Yeah.
And they also have a tendency to separate members from friends and family. If it's a case where you pack up and move, it's easy because you're separating physically from the entire world. But even in groups that are very that don't leave your town, that are everywhere, they have a tendency to cut off ties with family.
Scientology apparently is
they are
the worst.
Really bad with that. Jehovah's Witnesses, if you join, you have enough time to continue to talk to your family to try to convert them. And if they don't convert, then they're dead to you.
Yeah, think about that next time somebody knocks on your door.
And any family members who leave are immediately dead to you.
If you're together in the church and they leave, like a spouse or something.
Yep. Or if your kids grow up and leave the church, you have no contact with them past that. At least you're not supposed to. There's also, often you'll see mind control being used as a identifier for cults. That's meaningless. That's what all religion does. And if you look at all of these, all religions do it. Every Christian denomination, every Muslim group, every Jewish sect, all started out as a new movement at some point. We just have, or currently there's a commonly used cutoff point, because if it's newer than that, well, that's just too recent. But like we've already mentioned, the Adventists and Mormons have kind of moved out of the cult group, and both had to work very hard to make that change. And that's part of why, it's since the mid-1800s, because they both started in the mid-1800s.
If you go back and watch Life of Brian, it does a pretty good job of showing the Christianity and even Judaism to a degree, the time period and kind of where that came from a bit.
But even if you have just like in the 1930s, Adventists and Mormons were definitely cults.
Yeah. Well, I mean, when I was a kid, they were still considered cults to my area.
And then a high degree of devotion to a single leader. Generally, every reform movement has a leader, and the members are highly devoted to that leader.
The Pope, for example.
Well, that's not even an example of a reform movement.
Not even reform
Martin Luther.
Yeah.
Wesley with the Methodist movement. Joseph Smith with the Mormons. Mary Baker Eddy with Christian Science. You look at all these groups, and there is a single leader that there's a lot of devotion towards. They tend to become viewed as less cult-like after that leader dies. And like one of the things that helped Adventists become less viewed as a cult, despite being quite weird, when the prophet died, they didn't have a new one. The Mormon Church has always had a prophet. And that made it so that, they stopped being viewed as a cult generally because it became politically expedient, not because of anything they actually did. The novel beliefs. Every reform movement has a new belief. So whether it's a reformer or a cult, that is how it really comes down to is how far does it deviate from orthodoxy. If you're trying to go too far, it's a cult. If you're only doing small incremental changes, then it's just reform or a schism or something like that. Deviating from social norms. Almost all reform groups view the church. The reason there is a need for reform is not only have they gotten lax on the beliefs, but they've gotten too cozy with the general secular society. So you have to tighten up on how people behave so that they can be more pure and more righteous. Every group does that. The only distinction is how much. Is it a normal amount or an abnormal amount? If it's an abnormal amount of deviation. So if it's a standard deviation out, that's not necessarily culty. If it's more than a standard deviation, then it's culty. Groups isolating themselves from society. That was something that, the Mormons did that. Mm-hmm. They packed up and moved to Utah. Picked a bit of desert that nobody in their right mind would want. Georgetown, same thing.
Yeah.
They moved out to the middle of the jungle.
The one that comes to mind, like an earlier example, is the Anabaptists, that great hardcore history edition with the Anabaptists in Munster, I think it was. crazy story, of course, but yeah, they just walled themselves in, which is already like most of the towns were kind of strongholds themselves, and they of course just walled it off further and didn't allow anybody in. Had their own stronghold.
Yeah,
and then just did crazy religious things inside. Like they just got weirder and weirder and weirder.
But when you're trying to form a new group, it is helpful to get enough distance that you can solidify who and what you are. And so that's not an uncommon thing. It's gotten more difficult as land that you can actually live on that isn't already populated has gotten scarce. Yes, there is plenty of land that is not occupied. Most of it is like Eastern Oregon. There's no water.
Yeah.
Or it's like the mountains of central Idaho where there's no flat ground.
Yeah, can't live there, can't build there, yeah, can't survive the winters, yeah, etc.
Yeah, one family, that's one thing. If you're trying to move a community out there, yeah, good luck. Almost all new groups will aggressively proselytize because if you think you're right and everybody else is wrong, it's your duty to teach them. So that's not really all that unusual. And separating from friends and family, naturally, some of that's going to happen no matter what. But most groups aren't heartless enough to try to separate children from their parents.
This is true.
And with that, we're going to take a break. Atheist Nomads is proudly brought to you by listeners just like you. You can find out how you can become a patron at patreon.com/atheistnomads. That's patreon.com/atheistnomads. And we have a new patron, Mikey Pullman.
Yay, Mikey.
Yeah, I was definitely surprised to see that. Thank you, Mikey. You rock. And I've been talking about Ting the last few episodes, and we've actually been having some difficulties with it. I checked the compatibility of our phones that we had from Verizon. I had a Galaxy S7. Lauren has a Galaxy S7 Edge. Both came from Verizon. They're the Verizon variants. And what we saw on the Ting compatibility checker was that they were compatible for GSM only and no 3G. What we saw was spotty coverage on 4G only. And I picked up a Nexus 5X, and so far I'm seeing much better coverage. So if you do want to switch to Ting, I am not going to not recommend it because it is a much smarter way of doing phones. You don't have to be paying the evil AT&T and Verizon, and paying for what you use is just such a smarter way of doing it. I will still have the link in the show notes. If you want to use my referral link, you'll get $25. I'll get $25. Actually, I think the first time I get 50. But do be aware that if you are coming from another network and you're wanting to bring your own device, check the compatibility. And if you're seeing issues being reported with compatibility, okay, I'm just going to flat out say it. If you're bringing a Verizon device, you're fucked. Verizon is weird. They don't follow the normal global standards, which means, like, I've run into this at work with courier handhelds, where we got one that's supposed to be a good 4G device. Yeah, does great 4G on everything but Verizon.
Of course.
It doesn't have Verizon's primary channel. Well, getting Verizon's primary channel in a device often means they're not putting in it one of the other 4G channels, which means if you take it to a different network and it's a Verizon phone, you're not going to have as good of coverage because you're missing some of the frequencies.
Right. I think it's probably a case to run dual SIMs, right? Some of the fully unlocked phones, depending on your carrier, some of them will allow dual SIMs.
Yeah, either built in or like with this. If with the Nexus 5X, if I knew I was going to be in areas where coverage was pretty rough, I could pick up a Ting CDMA SIM card, and I could swap for whichever one works better.
Yeah, right.
It would mean I'd have a different phone number part of the time, but yeah, $6 a phone actually means $6 an active SIM card.
Nice.
Plus whatever your usage is.
So you've got the Nexus 5X. That means you can be on Google's
Could do Google Project Phi.
Google Phi, yeah. Have you looked through the differences there between Ting?
Yes, I have. I
assume you have.
The biggest difference is Ting, you pick, do you want GSM or do you want CDMA? For GSM, Ting uses T-Mobile. For CDMA, they use Sprint.
Oh, okay.
Project Phi, you do both CDMA and GSM.
Right.
It goes with whatever's faster at all times between T-Mobile and Sprint and US Cellular.
Okay.
So they add in one more carrier that most of the country doesn't exist. But Ting is $10 a month cheaper.
Pretty substantial, yeah. For a budget service, yeah.
For our usage, it's about $10 cheaper.
That's not bad.
Yeah. So anyway, yeah, you can check it out. And we're going to go ahead and jump into the headlines. On June 2, Pedro Sanchez became the new Prime Minister of Spain. And what's most notable is he got this after his predecessor was kicked out over corruption. And he is from the leader of the Socialist Party, which has one of the smaller, not necessarily one of the smallest, but a small minority in the parliament. So he got that position after that by forming a coalition with groups like the Catalonian and Basque nationalists.
Wow.
He's also an atheist.
And yeah, I saw his swearing in thing, which was fantastic. That was
So he took the oath before King Felipe with no Bible and no crucifix, breaking with all of their tradition. But the president of the Bishops' Conference was still there and blessed him. Of course, now the Catholic Church is scared shitless. He's campaigned against state funding of the church. He wants to remove religious symbols from public institutions. And he wants to separate schools from religion. And
I applaud him for all of that, honestly.
Yeah, that's all really good. That's awesome. His party wants to advance gay rights. They want to legalize euthanasia. And the new foreign minister wants to re-examine Spain's treaty with the Vatican. The Catholic Church is calling this a, quote, aggressive secular agenda.
Which any secular agenda is aggressive to most religions. Like, it's just how they play.
You're right. Spain has been basically the way they've been running it is kind of the old school, they've kind of maintained the old school Catholic monarchy model of church and state are two parallel institutions that are deeply intertwined. And that sucks. It's stupid and it's outdated.
Yeah. I think Spain's one of the heavier, there are countries that have a tighter intertwining between the church and state, but Spain kind of has a very close identity. Yeah. The others have kind of removed the identity. They've kept the visuals, like England, for example. Yeah, the Church of England doesn't really have a ton to do with state affairs these days, but
except for about a third of the seats in the House of Lords.
Yeah, but the people that are so secular that they can't really apply their agenda, where Spain's been pretty religious overall.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Now, they've still managed to get things like legal abortion and same-sex marriage, despite staunch opposition from the church. So, obviously, the church's power has been weakening, and now he wants to just rip it all out. I hope he's successful.
Yeah, as far as one of the European countries, I think it's going to be a great test bed for moving forward.
I think one thing that's going to make it difficult is with the coalition he's formed, he may not have that much support to actually do some of that. And he also doesn't really have a mandate. He got in because the last guy was too corrupt and his party couldn't form a new government. That's not the strongest way to take office.
Not usually, no.
Yeah.
But it sounds like he's got a decent amount of public support. It's not huge, but it's not bad either. So as long as he doesn't screw up too badly, I think he'll probably do okay.
Yeah.
They don't wait very long in Europe, though. Like, for leaders to do things, they don't wait very long.
Oh,
so,
yeah.
He's kind of got to do a pretty good job pretty quickly, but legalizing
abortion wasn't the end of the constitutional reforms in Ireland.
That was a big vote.
Yes, and their next referendum will be in October, where they will be voting to remove the offense of blasphemy from their constitution.
God, finally.
Yeah. And what's awesome is the Minister of Justice and Equality. I wish our Attorney General had equality in his title, but Minister of Justice and Equality is kind of pushing these constitutional reforms. And we'll be very happy to let the world know that blasphemy as a crime doesn't fit with Irish values.
Well, any modern Western value.
Yeah, it's the victimless crime, right? That's the classic quote about that. Yeah,
But the Islamic world has been, whenever they get flack from the West for punishing people for blasphemy, they have a tendency to cite Ireland. Like, if anybody in the EU tries to call them out for it, Ireland's in the EU. It hasn't been prosecuted in forever, but it's still in the Constitution. Yeah. Next up will be probably a referendum next year on removing a reference to, quote, a woman's life within the home.
Aw, that's so quaint.
It's in the Constitution.
What does it say about it, though?
Oh, I don't know. I haven't dug into that. We'll talk about that next year.
Yeah, there we go.
Boy Scouts are doubling down on not accepting atheists.
Boo.
Yeah.
They'll let in trans kids. They'll let in gay scout leaders and scouts. They will let in now girls. No atheists. And they passed, their National Executive Board passed a resolution reaffirming duty to God. And kind of the key line in it really is the recognition of God as the ruling and leading power in the universe, and the grateful acknowledgement of his favors and blessing are necessary to the best type of citizenship and are wholesome precepts in the education of the growing members. No matter what the religious faith of the members may be, this fundamental of good citizenship should be kept before them. Meaning, doesn't matter what God you believe in, but if you don't believe in a God, you're a bad person.
You're a bad citizen.
Yeah, bad citizen and not worthy of their ranks, basically. Mm-hmm. The Girl Scouts, they've got a reference to God in there. You've got to swear to a God of some type in their, I forget what the hell it's called, their invocation, whatever the hell their pledge, I guess it is. But they also allow an atheist. They pretty much allow in pretty much anyone. That's they're very inclusive.
Yeah. So yeah, Boy Scouts, they are quickly moving down the path of pissing off everyone.
Yeah, Mormon run or no, apparently it doesn't really matter.
Yeah, because they've now pissed off Mormons, evangelicals. They haven't satisfied liberals much.
Yeah, with Trump speaking at their rally. Yeah.
Yeah. Ralph Reed is the chairman of the Faith and Freedom Coalition, and at the Road to Majority conference, he told the audience that he's working with the Republican leadership in the Senate to put a repeal of the Johnson Amendment in a must-pass bill this year.
Yeah, this one, of course, is really troubling. It's happened once before, where they applied it into a bill that was pretty mandatory, but they stripped it. So toward the last minute. That
was this spring.
Yeah.
In the House Omnibus budget bill, it was removed by the Senate parliamentarian.
Yeah, which I think is probably going to happen again. It honestly better happen again. No points are going to be garnered by allowing this in there. I don't feel.
I think they're going to push it. I hope it fails because they want to keep their base enthused about something, and so they need to at least make this a fight right before the midterms.
Yeah, it's one of those things where they've done it before in religious issues, where they will put up a fight. It's a fake fight, and then they don't really seem to want it either, and then they back down or use process to strip it away. And I think that's probably what they want on this one, because it does make them look pretty good. Mm-hmm. And it's one of those things where they can double down on, I tried to get, this Johnson Amendment repealed, and I also voted against this terrible bill at the same time. Like, they can spin it however they want to their constituents. So,
yeah. Now, I'm curious about how this is all going to work out because, well, like the next story, Mike Pence spoke at the Southern Baptist Convention with 10,000 people present And he took the opportunity to basically turn it into a campaign rally. Many of the people there gave him a lot of applause, and many, including the new president of the Southern Baptist Convention, were offended by him politicizing their religious convention. One of the things he talked about before he turned it into a full-on partisan campaign rally was how they're going to continue to work to repeal the Johnson Amendment.
Right. That's kind of his big bugaboo, right? It's one of them, actually. Hating gays and loving his mother, I think, are the other two. But
no, it's his mommy.
Mommy, right? This is
which is his wife.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's right. The wife is mommy. That's so creepy. That's been one of his core issues for quite a long time. He definitely wants that. He wants a theocracy, a total theocracy. And it seems so. I think there's another story about this, but many of the people there don't really want that.
Right.
Surprisingly.
Well, I think they've got this coming to them, and I hope this starts turning sentiments back in favor of the Johnson Amendment, because the Southern Baptist Church has basically become a wing of the Republican Party.
Yeah, very much so.
And when they went in full on with a single party, why wouldn't the party want to take advantage of that? To Pence, this probably wasn't weird, because that's his base.
Yeah, truly. They're the ones who have always supported him. The interesting thing to me on this one was the backlash was kind of unexpected. But I think to a large degree, these people also know that they need to feel persecuted. They need to feel oppressed, and they're safely doing that behind the Johnson Amendment. And a few other things, of course, but they can choose which side of the field to play because it's there's a legality in front of them. So I think that it's probably in their best interest to be able to scoot ahead in political means and then fall back whenever they want.
Okay,
I never thought about that, but yeah, makes sense.
I think there's also just a bit of they were wanting to be able to interject into politics. They didn't want politics interjecting into their church.
Yeah, right. And the vice versa thing. Yeah, that makes sense.
Because that's what the religious right has been pushing for, is religion to have a voice in politics. They are now starting to see the chickens come back into roost, because when religion has a voice in politics, politics has a voice in religion.
And it's ruining both. The popularity of both is dwindling so strong and so steadily. And they're so tied together now that what happens to one does seem to happen to the other. So, yeah, I think they're probably seeing the writing on the wall a little bit too. The backlash is just getting stronger on progressive issues, and people will only put up with that for so long. So,
yep, yeah. As it turns out, separation of church and state is good for everyone.
It really is. Yeah.
All right, and we're going to take another break, and then we have a discussion. We love hearing from our listeners. You can email us at contact@atheistnomads.com, tweet us @atheistnomads, send us a message on our Facebook page at facebook.com/atheistnomads, or better yet, call us and leave us a message at 541-203-0666. We might even play it on the show. You can also help us out by leaving us a review on iTunes, Stitcher, or your podcast directory of choice. And Lauren, how can our listeners who feel really guilty when they're at work and neglecting their dogs, how can they get somebody to save $25 getting somebody to go take care of their dog for them?
I love that you're pushing this for me. Oh, man. Okay, so there's an app out there called WAG! So WAG! Walker. And it's like an Uber for dog walking, where if you can't conveniently walk your dog, you can get somebody in the neighborhood to come by and do it for you. Pretty decent rates. And if you use my referral bonus, you get $25 off, which is one free 20-minute walk, I believe. Maybe even a 30-minute walk. I can't remember off the top of my head. That code is my name, Lauren, LAUREN 26048. So, yeah, if you use that code, you get $25 off your first walk and get to try it out and make those puppies happy.
Very nice. And if you're suffering under the burden of oppressive, horrible student loans and can't make your payments, let me phrase that. Can't keep making those payments. You need to be current on your payments. And you can't take advantage of any of the federal programs. Check out Earnest. There's a link in the show notes that has my referral link. You'll get $200 after you refinance your loans, and I'll get $200 as well. So it's a win-win. And like in our case, that helped us cut our student loan payments in half. That was huge.
Yeah, it's really big.
And in feedback, we got a post on the Facebook page from Arthur. Enjoying this week's podcast, reminding me of the times Auburn Adventist Academy would take Bible classes to the Federal Way Messianic Church to show us what Judaism was like. Years later, when I moved to New York City, I saw what a charade this was.
Oh, those poor kids have no idea.
Probably didn't even bring any decent bagel with them, honestly.
I was going to say, it's like having like grocery store bagels your whole life and then going to New York and having the real thing. I have not partaken in such divinity, but I hear it exists and it is amazing and life-changing.
Yeah, I heard the same.
In the Jewish quarter of the old city of Jerusalem, there is a bagel shop where you can sit and look down at the Western Wall while you eat any kind of bagel you can imagine that's kosher.
Do they have locks, though?
I don't know.
That seems important to me.
That was a long time ago, and I don't even remember if I ate a bagel there.
Oh, man. Oh.
I think I did.
Shaking my head. You can't pass that stuff up.
Hey, I'd already had pizza on the Via Dolorosa.
No, that's not bad.
So, but no, yeah, the Arthur's experience was, he actually got to attend a Messianic church. Since Auburn is an Adventist boarding school in the Puget Sound, like definitely within the metropolitan area of Seattle. It wasn't when that was started, but it's now just a suburb of Seattle. So is Federal Way, and when you're in a metropolitan area, you actually have access to an actual Messianic church. Out in the middle of nowhere in Southern Oregon, no, we didn't have that.
No.
Nope, we had the one random evangelical asshole playing Jew. Yeah. Okay, so I am going to quickly go through these next couple of headlines, and then probably go directly into a rant.
I was going to say, you got too many news items again, didn't you?
No, this is all intentional.
Okay.
The U.S. is withdrawn from the UN Human Rights Council. The chief of the UN Human Rights Council, shortly before that, who is a prince from Jordan, has condemned Trump's policy of breaking up migrant families as unconscionable. We're talking an Arab prince.
Yeah.
I guess he was one of the good ones.
Yeah. Huckabee-Sanders defended the policy because it's very biblical to enforce the law. It's also rumored she will be resigning.
I think Sessions had a similar issue, like used the Bible to...
He did, and then...
With a scary, creepy-ass grin when he did it.
Now, he quoted Romans.
Yeah, right.
All Huckabee-Sanders said was, it's very biblical to enforce the law. Sessions went in depth into how that was, because, in the book of Romans, there is a section about how the government is put in place by God, and you have to follow the law.
Surprisingly, we can change our laws, so God might not have anything to do with it whatsoever.
Yeah.
It's just so, like, what does that have to do with anything? You just said a whole lot of nothing.
That's kind of how he speaks, yeah.
Pretty hilarious.
600 ministers from the United Methodist Church, which Jeff Sessions is a member of, including his bishop, have filed formal charges against him in the church court. This is unprecedented, almost unprecedented, because that court's normally only used against clergy. But Sessions keeps using the Bible to defend horrible, terrible things, and doesn't make it a secret that he's an active member of the Methodist Church.
Right. They've got a book of discipline that he's apparently crossed. And that's what they're calling him out for.
Yeah. Well, the actions he's taking are unconscionable violations of basic human rights.
Yes.
and he's using the Bible to justify it. And I think if you call yourself a Christian and you're okay with atrocities being committed in the name of God, you are a fucking worthless sack of shit.
To put it lightly.
Mm-hmm. I mean, there's no good excuse for any atrocities like that. But to use the Bible like he is, as a highly elected official, semi-elected.
Currently appointed.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, but formerly elected.
Right. Yeah, it's really disturbing, of course, and it's scary. Like, it's if this kind of atrocity is something that he will apply the Bible to, is there any atrocity that he wouldn't?
Yeah.
And that's the big problem.
Okay, so the basic facts of what's going on right now. They are using a couple of laws, one that allows for filing criminal charges against people who enter the country illegally, one that has never been used against people who are seeking asylum, and the standard that if parents go to jail, their kids don't go with them. So combining those two things, they have taken, in just the last couple of weeks, over 2,000 children from their parents for crossing the southern border illegally. And they are putting them in tent cities. They're locking them up in cages. Guards are laughing at crying children. There was one girl who other kids there had to figure out how to change her diaper because the guards wouldn't touch her.
And they're explicitly not allowed to touch them.
Yeah.
No hugging, no comforting, no...
One guard quit because he was told to not allow children to hug each other. Not allow siblings to hug each other.
Why? Why would you... Wow. It's mind-boggling. Like, who passed these memos? Who made this happen and follow the paperwork, and it all goes back to Jeff Sessions and Trump.
Well, actually, in the director of Homeland Security, I forget her name, but so one of the, I think it was MSNBC that found the initial story on that. There was a conversation that was recorded, written down, recorded between her and Sessions, and I forget who else was there. So this has been the plan since right after the election.
Yep.
This was going to be part of Trump's legacy, the whole wall.
Right.
The whole, yeah.
This is how to keep people from crossing the border, seemingly, and a way to punish people at the same time. And so every time she was on, she did the press conference today, I believe, and like pretty much everything out of her mouth was obviously a lie, according to this revelation that this came about. So she is like the Goebbels of the current Reich there. It's awful, and the fact that someone, I forget who it was, one of the press corps played the sounds of a crying child during her or right after her the press conference, and she was visibly shaken when she left the podium, which I guess that speaks for something, but still they went through with this. Man, it's completely unconscionable. Yeah. Like, I can't imagine.
It's Kirsten Nielsen is the name.
Yeah, there you go. Thank you.
One of the things that makes this so terrible is these children they're taking away from these parents. There is no plan to return them.
No, they have.
Or how do you find their parents at this point? They're lost kids at this point. Like, how? There's no social security numbers. How do you get them back? I honestly think that they're going to start putting
them in buses and dropping them off on the other side of the border and just leaving them in the desert.
It wouldn't shock me.
I don't see what else that they could do.
Unless they just want to imprison them forever and use the DHS funding and ICE funding for...
Yeah. It's one of those things where they didn't think this through, which is terrifying.
Or they did, and that's even more terrifying.
As far as we know, there isn't any plan for what to do with these kids.
Oh, yeah. The follow-up, yeah. I gotcha.
Which means, and these children have done nothing wrong.
And most of their parents haven't either. Yeah, applying, coming across the border to apply to get away from the gangs and everything, that's not illegal whatsoever. That's not worthy of jail. And it is, as far as I'm aware so far, the law is there. The reason the kids can be removed from their parents to go to jail is because spouses who have domestic abuse issues, when they come across the border, they want to be able to remove them safely. And usually the kids will go to any sibling that's in the U.S. legally or even illegally, the solid next of kin. And that's not what they're doing now. This is a whole different thing.
Yeah.
And that's happened in the past a few times, not a ton, like hundreds as far as I'm aware. But yeah, 2,000 within the course of a few weeks, I guess. That's unheard of.
Well, the norm has been book and release the parents, hold the kids while you go through that process, and then send them off together.
Right.
That has been the norm, because doing anything else is an atrocity.
And I believe every family like that will have a caseworker, so they can keep track and to be able to reunite them safely. There's no caseworkers here. It's one giant prison facility, basically. So
several prison facilities.
Yeah, in Texas.
Not only that, but they're turning around and saying that it's the Democrats' fault.
Yeah.
For obstructing Congress and not allowing them to pass laws that would fix this problem. Like, your idea of fixing the problem is building a giant wall, and you're using children as leverage.
And
that is effed up.
Yeah, completely effed up.
And especially since that wall can be defeated with a $100 ladder or a shovel.
Yeah.
It's stupid and ridiculous, and to hold children hostage to try to get that funding, I don't know how you can get any worse than that.
As if the Democrats could do the funding anyway. Like,
right.
The Democrats,
they're not in control.
No, they've had the executive branch when Obama was president. That's pretty much all they've had in the last damn near 20 years. So what the fuck can they do? They can do nothing. So this is not on them in any way. How they can even say that is beyond me. But yeah, like anything else they say, I guess it's.
So what are they talking about right now, as we're recording?
Oh, what?
How they're trying to stop the illegal opioids and drug trafficking problems. Totally ignoring the entire thing.
These kids aren't trafficking opiates.
They're not mules. No, they're not even talking about the kids. They're not talking about immigration at all. They've totally
just new drug problem.
Yep, they're just tweeting about the drug.
As far as I'm aware, is mostly a legal drug issue and not even illegal opioids.
Exactly.
Like the illegal market is nothing compared to what the legal market has been doing.
Yeah.
What the fuck?
However, there has been some fundraisers that have been going on to raise money for these kids. Last I saw, they were going for $6 million, and that had been beaten, and they're going for $8 million now.
And raising money to do what?
I didn't go into what exactly that is for.
I'm gonna guess lawyers.
I'm gonna guess tons of lawyers.
Yeah, because this is one of those scenarios where give money, but watch out what it's going to be used for, because
that's way too much money for one person to handle, or one group to handle. So,
and it is a nonprofit that I believe that was registered for.
Yeah.
Okay.
So at least it's traceable, but
right, because there's no way to provide aid to these kids directly because they're being held in concentration camps.
Even senators can't see them half the time. So yeah.
Apparently, people have tried marching on the actual encampments and have been deterred.
They took one over in Portland today. A bunch of people, actually not a camp. It was the ICE building. A bunch of people protested and kind of surrounded it and didn't allow anybody in or out for a little bit. I don't know how that ended up, but that was the case last I heard.
Maybe they should play the sound of crying children at those people.
No, that'd be brilliant. Yeah, and then share just cause.
Yeah. Oh man, it's George Takei put it pretty well on Twitter today. At least when he was put in an internment camp, he had his parents with him.
Yeah, most of the Jewish folks who were rounded up also were rounded up as families.
Yeah.
Stripping kids away willy-nilly with no known recourse to fix it.
Just indefinite separation.
Right. Like
there's one historical corollary that comes to mind, and that's what Australia was doing with the Aborigines for many, many, many decades.
Yeah, you're right. That's pretty close.
And Australia will admit that what they were doing was an attempt at very slow cultural genocide. They weren't trying to wipe out the people. They were just trying to wipe out their culture.
Right.
By taking their children.
Yeah.
And what Trump and Sessions are doing now, I can't tell what their goal is.
I honestly think this is an egotistical push by the Trump administration to facilitate the building of a wall, which is Trump's legacy.
Which isn't going to happen.
Doesn't matter. He wants it to happen. He's going to try and make it happen. Even if he has to go down there and build it himself, he's going to have some kind of legacy.
And the only
Even
way,
if he destroys the country in the process.
the only way he's going to get that is if he sends the army to not let the House leave until they get a bill to fund it.
Yeah. And I do like the idea that I heard online where these camps now are Trump towers.
Mm-hmm.
Brand them Trump towers and let that be his legacy. Because that's going to go down in the annals of history, I feel.
Yep.
Yeah.
Agreed.
We're going to have
His kids are going to have to change their name.
If we're lucky, this is just going to be a case of thousands of lost children with hundreds of stories of them being happily reunited with their parents. That's if we're lucky.
We already know that children have been lost to traffickers. That a lot of children, before this huge detention happened, were being falling under the radar or falling off the radar completely. So I don't trust the government's ability to keep track of any of these kids. I also hope for some happy reunion stories, but like I said, I would fully expect them to bust them across the border and drop them off and hope the Mexican government is there to pick them up. If I were the Mexican government, I would be at the border right now.
Yeah.
I think they're probably going to be pretty close.
I mean, this is a lot of these kids probably aren't even Mexican. I mean, how many people from Guatemala go through Mexico?
Guatemala, Honduras, El Salvador.
So, I mean, this isn't as simple as just kicking them over the next border.
Yeah. I've not checked Twitter for Vincenzo Fox's response, but he's usually so well-spoken against Trump. I'm really curious to see what he says as one of the most outspoken Mexican officials or former officials.
This would be a case where if the Mexican government launched raids against the U.S. to free these kids,
you'd have a bunch of Americans lining the way applauding them.
Yeah.
And I would be applauding.
Remember the Alamo in this case. Yeah.
This is a scenario that makes me ashamed to be an American.
Yeah.
I never thought that would happen.
Yeah. I've always kind of known that was going to happen.
Actually, Ferguson, I think, was kind of the turning point for me that, there's no more pride in nationalism whatsoever after that. Again, you can't undo that.
I laugh because I'm trying to think as far back when that happened to me. I had something to do. I think it was probably in 3rd grade when I stopped standing for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Good on you on that one.
I was a brat, but I had my rights.
Yeah. Oh, man. So this is bad. The level of bad. Oh, and one thing that is just beautiful with this is the timing of pulling out of the UN Human Rights Commission right as the UN Human Rights Commission is starting to condemn us. And the reason we're pulling out of the Human Rights Commission is because they keep bullying Israel.
That was our given excuse?
Yeah, they're picking on Israel. Why are you guys always picking on Israel? It's like, well, maybe because they're committing terrible atrocities? Maybe?
Might have something to do with it.
And a part of me kind of wonders, was it just because the Trump administration wants to be able to commit their own atrocities?
It almost seems like it. I mean, again, this was kind of written on the wall so long ago that, this is what they want. They've wanted it. They're just now making an active thing. The timing might be suspicious, but
now if they wanted to take this seriously, and I wouldn't be happy with it, but I wouldn't be making it a major focus in an episode of the podcast. If they set up refugee camps and were picking up people at the border and putting families into into refugee camps while they could process them. Yeah.
A whole different ballgame there, I feel.
If they were to do that, there would be people who would be not happy with it, but there would be, as long as there was processing that was happening, that, asylum requests were being considered, I think most people would be okay with that. And they would still get what they want, except, what we would all hope is what they want. But what they want is to punish people and intimidate people to not come to the U.S.
Well, it's working.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's just working for all those countries that aren't shitholes.
Yeah.
There's no way we're going to be able to get anybody to move to America to be engineers and doctors or anything if this is how we treat people.
No, I mean, this is coming, a week and a half after we fucked over both Canada and Mexico.
Oh, yeah,
our
totally.
the two attached countries in trade agreements, and of course every other country out there pretty much too. If we were Mexico, as you mentioned, we'd probably be crossing borders by now.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I don't think that we'd stand for what we've done to them so far.
Yeah. This is Dustin coming in from editing. Today, so Wednesday, Trump signed an executive order putting a temporary halt in place on separating children from their families. That's the only thing that's changing. The zero tolerance policy is still in effect, and nothing is being done for the more than 2,000 children already affected by this. And their parents are still getting deported while their kids are still separate from them. So this is not an issue that is going away. This isn't something that's been solved. It's Trump trying to do something meaningless to reduce the pressure and distract us from it. So everything we said in this discussion is still relevant. This is still a serious problem, and serious changes still need to happen, and all of those kids need to be back with their parents now. And now back to the discussion. Yeah. So what can we do about this?
Yeah, bitch and moan like usual, but
find your local ICE office.
Contact your representatives.
Contact your representatives. Not just contact, but just be like, you cannot support this administration anymore.
And I don't think protesting ICE offices is going to be effective, because those are the grunts.
The grunts are still following orders.
Okay.
Whether you were the Nazi who made the decision or the Nazi that carried it out, you are still a Nazi. Sorry, but these guys, if they're working with these people, they've got to stand up for themselves too.
Yeah, their hands are dirty. And
yeah,
we've seen several that have quit. So yeah, I'm okay with the protests. I don't know how effective any protest is in that regard, but it's getting good media attention. There are a bunch of protests scheduled for June 30 nationwide. If you can attend the ones in DC and New York, definitely do. Those will be the biggest. Otherwise, make the one in your city as big as possible.
Yeah.
If you want a protest to be effective, the crowd needs to be huge. 100 people protesting an ICE office, the only people who are going to notice are the people inconvenienced trying to go to work. 20,000 people clogging up Washington, D.C., or 300,000 clogging up downtown New York. Yeah, that's going to get noticed. Yeah, they would. And I'm one of these days, one of these protests is going to turn into a general protest, and no one's going to go to work on Monday. Yeah. And no one's going to go to work on Tuesday until something changes. And I know everyone's teetering. Most of the country can't afford even a $500 emergency right now, but it's going to happen. Probably sooner rather than later at this point, I think. Yeah. And like, even if you're in, say, in Boise, there's a protest scheduled for June 30 at the Capitol. If there's a few hundred, one news outlet might cover it. If we can get 1,000 people, they're all going to cover it. Yeah. I think we had 3,500 for the last Women's March. I forget how big the March for Science was, but the Women's March, I think it was like 3,500. It was a large crowd. Wow. I think the biggest crowd down there I've seen yet. So I think we can probably come close to that on this issue, considering how it's family shit. Everyone cares about families. It's you're a part of one, whether you want to be or not sometimes. But yeah. Yeah. And whether you're a parent, whether you have parents, you consider yourself a humanist or not, protest the fuck out of this. And if you're not American, talk to your governments and ask them to protest this action that the U.S. government has taken. That can make a huge effect, too. Yes, it can. There's probably more tariffs that can be applied to us, honestly. Maybe not a lot more at this point, but there's probably some more. So, yeah, the stronger the government outcry across the world, yeah, the more media coverage again, and shit can change. And definitely, if you're American, call your representatives, call your senator, call your governor, because Trump's trying to get National Guard to go to the southern border. Yeah, last I saw, 12 states have pulled their National Guard support.
which is a pretty good start for, like, it was, 3 this afternoon our time, I think, when I started seeing results for that. So that's, it's not going to happen here, I'm certain. But, yeah, keep pressure on governors, too, because that's a pretty big thing.
Gary, thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Lauren, thank you.
Yay. Sad topics.
Yeah. It's all that's been in the news.
Yeah, I heard today that it's coverable. Unlike the Mueller investigation, which is pretty complex, this one issue is good on sound bites, good on video bites, and it's easily coverable for the dumb American attention span that we've got.
And it's important enough that it's worth talking about.
Absolutely.
And it's definitely important enough to be worth getting angry about.
Yes.
So, yeah, stay angry, vote, and remember, not all those who wander are lost.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Atheist Nomads. You can find show notes and contact information at atheistnomads.com. Follow us on Twitter at Atheist Nomads, and like us on Facebook at facebook.com/Atheist Nomads. Please subscribe to the show in iTunes, Stitcher, or your podcatcher of choice, and while you're there, feel free to leave us a review. Theme music is courtesy of Sturdy Fred. Until next time, this has been the Atheist Nomads.